Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Today we're going to still continue with the chapters of the sins of the body. And the author started with saying, to hunt with something that kills the animal by its weight, such as stone. So among the sins of the body is for one to hunt using something that kills with its weight and not with its edge, to use like a stone, stick, or the like. An example of that is also the bullets that they use nowadays in hunting because those bullets kill out of weight, and speed specifically, and not because of its sharp edge. But for example, like an arrow, this kills with an edge. Also a knife. But we're talking about the hunting. So using arrow to hunt is permissible, using bullets to hunt is not permissible. And what is killed by these bullets is not considered Meta. Is considered Meta. So Meta is not permissible to eat. Now, if this animal was hit by a bullet and it didn't kill the prey, so rather, for example, it was hit in the leg, and this prevented it from running away. So the hunter then reaches the prey and then slaughters it properly with a knife while saying Bismillah, while it has sustained life. In this case, it's halal and it's permissible to eat. The proper slaughtering takes place by cutting off both the windpipe and the food pipe, and to cut them off with something sharp like a knife. You can't use a tooth or a bone to cut them off. Even if the tooth is sharp, you cannot use it to slaughter. Same thing with the bone or the stone. It's not considered a proper slaughtering. So if you have a sharp bone, you do not use it to slaughter. Again, it's not considered proper slaughtering. So the slaughtering of the animal needs to take place while the animal has a sustained life. And a sign that the animal has a sustained life when you slaughter it is that after slaughtering it, it moves in a strong way and the blood comes out in a strong way. The author also said it's haram, it's a sign of the body to use an animal as a shooting target. So, for example, if someone takes animals as a shooting target, as practice target, this is not okay. Doing that is prohibited. One does not practice shooting on something that has a soul. And this is haram, an enormous thing to do. For example, like we know, if you see how people practice shooting um, on birds, this is haram. This is prohibited. The author said, for the divorced woman or widow who is observing a post-marital waiting period, to inexcusably leave her home, and for such a widow to wear perfumes, dress up, and the like. So, explanation. If the husband dies, it's prohibited for the wife to do certain issues. She has to observe something called al-hadad. Al-hadad means to leave out dressing up until the end of iddah, to the end of the post-marital waiting period. So if the husband dies, his wife is not permitted to get married except after this iddah. This post-marital waiting period is 4 lunar months and 10 days. That is except she is pregnant. Then this period ends when she gives birth. So during this period, her iddah, whether it's 4 months and 10 days or up until she gives birth, the wife needs to leave out dressing up. So this does not mean she leaves out a specific color. She can wear any color that she wants, but she does not dress up. So even in black clothes, she doesn't wear fancy black clothes. So some people say when she's observing iddah, she's not allowed to let a marriageable man see her face or hear her voice, and this is not true. This is not correct. This is something that some people came up with and that does not have any origin in the religion. People need to be aware of this and it needs to be warned against so that they don't think she is doing something haram. And also, they are not spreading something which is not among the religious rules to be a religion of the rule. So, this woman who's observing the postpartum marital period, she is not, she is not allowed to sleep outside her house, and she does not leave her house except for a necessity. But it is permissible that she goes to visit some neighbors with the condition that she goes back home and sleeps at home. So she doesn't sleep at the neighbor's house, that is. That is the judgment if the husband dies. If other than the husband dies, it's not permissible for any woman among his relatives to make iddah on him more than 3 days. So that is the wife. That is the woman other than the wife are prohibited to absorb mourning longer than 3 days for the death of any of the relatives. So observing the mourning is only an obligation upon the wife. It's not an obligation on other than the wife. For example, like the sister or the mother or daughter. And other than the wife are not permitted to do that for more than 3 days. So if a woman leaves out dressing up and wearing perfume for more than 3 days to observe mourning for other than her husband, with this particular intention, she would be sinful for doing that. The author said to stain the mosque with unjust filth or to make it dirty even with pure material. So it's prohibited to stain the mosque with najis filth and something that is just filthy, like spit or mucus, for example, because it's an obligation to exalt the rights of Allah. And our rights right here, it's rights, not rights. So misspelling. To exalt the rights of Allah, and among the rights of Allah is the mosque. So exalting a mosque includes to use like the oud. An oud is something that smells good. It's like a perfume. This is something that was done in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ since the time of our Master Umar when he was Khalifa. So it's not something new and it's not something prohibited. The author said to delay performing Hajj until the death when able to perform it when alive. Okay, so among the sins of the body is for one to be able to make Hajj, and despite that, one delays making it until one dies. Which means if someone is able to make Hajj and he does not make it at the same year, he delays it 1 or 2 years, but then he makes it before he dies, in this case, he's not sinful. But if he is able to go to Hajj, but he does not go, he delays it, and then he dies before making Hajj, in this case, he becomes sinful for that because he died without doing a Hajj while he had the opportunity to do Hajj, and he had the finances. So because the time for him to fulfill Hajj ends by his death, um, so if he does not do it until he dies, then he will be delaying doing this obligation until the time is out, which is death. So he is sinful by that. And this is mentioned in the Quran, Surah Al-Munafiqun, in which Allah orders the believers to spend from which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endows upon them before they die. And then one would say, oh Allah, I wish I could have more time to pay zakat and fulfill Hajj. So this ayah pertains to the one who Hajj and zakat are obligated upon them. But despite that, they died without completing this obligation. And so this person will be considered as an enormous sinner. So of course, this is if he does not have an excuse for performing. So for example, if he was prevented from going to Hajj, so nowadays they give visas for Hajj. And if somebody does not obtain a visa, this is an excuse. Another excuse is like if someone can't go to Hajj because on his way there's someone who takes his money unjustly. He can't go to a Hajj except if his money is taken unjustly from him. So in this case, this would be an excuse not to perform at Hajj. In similar situations like that, like if there's like a war going on and people are going to get jailed. An example that I'm thinking of right now in modern times is like ICE. Um, yeah. The author said to take a loan with the inability to pay it back without informing the lender. So if someone is not in a state of a necessity and he makes a contract with another person that entails a debt on his part, so he takes money from this person. And so now he owes this person a certain amount of money. While he does not have an apparent way to get it back, to pay back, should I say, to pay back the debt. So he does not work, he does not have a job, he can't find a job, let's say, like he's poor, he doesn't have money It's an obligation upon him to tell the lender about his situation before making the aforementioned deal. So the lender needs to know his situation, the situation of the person requesting money. If he does not tell the lender and he is not capable of paying back the loan, then where is the lender going to get his money back from? That's why, from the beginning, the one who wants to borrow money tells the other person about his situation. Then that person has a choice, either to do like dealing with him, to give him the money, or to refrain from doing it. So he still needs to tell him about that. Um, the author said the sin of the body is to refuse to grant more time for the one who is unable to pay one's debt. So, if someone owes money to another person and he cannot pay it back, he does not have something that he can sell to pay back the debt. He's unable to pay it back and he's trying. The lender, the one who deserves the money, is not entitled to harm this other person. He is not entitled to put him in jail, to chase him, to harass him for his money, while he knows that he's unable to give him the money back. It's haram for the lender to do that. Rather, he gives him more time until he becomes able to pay back his debt. It's confirmed in the hadith narrated by Muslim from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, which means the one who grants more time to the person unable to pay back what he has to pay, or reduces the debt he has to pay. Such a person will be in the shadows of an arsh on the day of judgment, where there would be people, where there would be no other shade. So that is, he's not going to experience the heat of the sun on the day when the sun gets really close to the people. Allah protects him from the heat for doing that. So one time, the Prophet ﷺ, he heard two people arguing in the masjid, and their voices were high. The Prophet ﷺ asked about like what's going on, and he came to know that that one person was asking the other person to pay back his debt. The Prophet ﷺ made a sign to that person, to that companion, to reduce the debt up until half. So the companion immediately did that. He reduced the debt to half just by one sign of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is a good thing to do. On the other hand, the one who owns the other money, he cannot neglect paying him back. If he is not able, if he does not have enough money to do that, he needs to work. He needs to find a way. He can't just lay down and say, okay, I'm a poor person. I don't have money to pay back my debt. One day, inshallah, I'll have enough money, while not putting enough effort to pay back the debt. That's not how it works. Um, so he puts in the effort, and then whatever Allah wills for him to pay back the effort, it will be paid back. The author said to spend money in disobedience. Among the sins of the body is to pay money in a sinful way, to pay money to do a sin, whether it's an enormous sin or a small sin. So, for example, spending the money on a salary for a singer, which means religiously you cannot give a singer a salary. Even if the singing does not include sinning, like does not include haram instruments or even haram lyrics, you don't pay money for that. It's haram to pay money for as a salary for that purpose because the religion does not consider it beneficial. Um, there is a chapter in hiring and selling, also selling, high buying that we went over. And to pay someone, a requirement for a valid contract is to pay something that the religion considers a benefit. So you cannot give a salary, but a gift is permissible. So give them money as a gift is okay, but not as a salary. And obviously, like spending money on drugs, alcohol, pork, and halal food are all also examples of spending money in disobedience. The author said, to belittle the book of Quran, al-Mus'haf, and every Islamic knowledge, and to enable the child who has reached the age of mental discrimination to carry the Quran without wudu. So everything that includes lacking the obligatory exalting of the Quran is prohibited. Also, everything that does not exalt the Mus'haf at all is also prohibited. So that can be prohibited without being kufr, and it can be kufr. So withholding the Quran without wudu is a sin. But throwing the Mus'haf in the garbage while knowing it's Quran is blasphemy. Stepping on the Mus'haf while knowing it's the Mus'haf is blasphemy. The same rule applies to the books of the religious rules, the books of al-fiqh, the book of al-hadith, the books of interpretation of the Quran. Even if it's one paper that has Quran or Islamic knowledge, throwing it in the trash while knowingly doing that is blasphemy. Among these prohibited things is to let or to allow a child who has reached the age of mental discrimination to hold a mushaf without having wudu for other than the purpose of studying in it. So you remember we said that if a little child is studying the mushaf and he is at the age of mental discrimination, then it's permissible um, to let him hold the Quran, let him do that. But in this situation is different. He is in a stage of mental discrimination. He does not have his wudu, and you do not let him carry the mushaf for other than studying. So you do not want to tell him, go get the mushaf for me. This is prohibited because he does not have wudu and he is not holding it to study. He's holding it to bring it to you. Now, for such a little girl or a boy to carry a mushaf without having wudu, with the purpose of with the purpose of studying, or to take it to a place where this child is learning without having wudu, this is permissible. This is an exception that you can let him do that, and you are not sinful for letting him do that for this purpose, because if you tell the child to make wudu again before you study the mushaf, like can you go make wudu every time that they lose wudu, in many cases, this is harder for the child, and the child will leave out studying. This is why in the rules of the religion, he can carry without wudu, and it makes it easier in this case. The author said to unjustly change property line marks. That is, to change the markers between one property and that of another's, and to use the street for what is not lawful. Explanation. If a person makes his property wider, he takes from the property of his neighbor to make it his property wider. In this case, one would be committing an enormous sin. The Prophet ﷺ told us that the one who does that is damned on the day of judgment. This piece of land that he took on rightfully becomes like a ring in his neck. So that means that he will be swollen by this land and it will surround up to his neck. It will come up to his neck. Likewise, to use the street in a prohibited way, like the one who built something that hurts people who are walking or driving by, or to prevent others than him to use the street. So some people make part of the street as their property, like no one is allowed to do anything on it without their permission. For example, like there could be a seller there, like he sells at a particular spot. Later, when he leaves, he doesn't let anyone else use it except for him. And if they do want to use it, they have to pay a certain amount. This is haram and it's prohibited. The street's for everyone, so use it for the benefit, and then once you are done, you cannot prevent others from using it. The author said to use a borrowed items and other than what is one permitted to use by its owner, to keep it longer than permitted, or to lend it to someone else without permission. So if someone lends you something and he tells you use it for XYZ reasons, you are not permitted to use it for something else. For example, he lends you a horse to ride. You don't use it to transfer stones from one place to another. Likewise, if he lends you something for a specific period, for a week, you are not entitled to use it for more than that period without his permission. Likewise, you are not allowed It's not permissible for you to lend it to another person without his permission. For example, you borrowed a book from someone, and another person comes and he tells you, "Oh, this is a nice book. I've been meaning to read it." You can't say, "Okay, take it." No, you can't do that. Or you can't take it for a week, or go ahead, take it for a week. You can't do that. Not without the permission of the owner. It's not yours. The author said to prevent others from using what is permissible, that is unowned, such as preventing others from grazing their animal in an unowned meadow. Similarly, it's sinful to prevent others from collecting firewoods from the unowned land, from extracting salt, gold, silver, and other resources from their unowned origin, or from using drinking water from a self-replenishing source. So if there is something in the religion that is public, that is available for everyone, it's not permissible for someone to prevent others from benefiting from it. Example, like the riverbanks. These are not owned by a specific person. So religiously, it's not permitted for someone to control it and prevent others from benefiting from it. Also, the beaches. It's not permissible for someone to take part of the beach and prevent others from using it. Also, the land which is not owned. It's permissible for me to take my animals to graze there, and it's permissible for you to take your animals and graze there. It's prohibited for someone to prevent others from grazing their animals in such a piece of land. That is public land. So in the past, some unjust people, they used to do that. They would say this land from here to here, and basically they put limits. They would say this is only for my animals and no one else can graze there. This is prohibited. Likewise, if a land is unowned, it is permissible for me to take the dead wood, the firewood from it, and it's permissible for you to do that. I cannot prevent others from taking firewood from that land, and no one can prevent me. Likewise, if there is a land that contains salt and is unowned, it's permissible for me to extract the salt from it, and it's permissible for you to do that. Religiously, this is the ruling. No one is entitled to say, I prevent others from extracting salt from this land. And the same thing applies to resources like silver, gold, iron, copper, or whatever. So some rulers in the Gulf area, they think that all the oil that comes from that land is theirs, that's they own it. And so that they distribute it that way when it's not really the case. So they prevent anyone from taking it except from their permission. Same thing I'm thinking about like some lands where there's gold in that land. Again, silver in that land. Um, where they hire people to extract the gold and it only goes back to them. And a lot of property that's, government owned, I'm putting quotations over government owned because the government doesn't really own them. It's haram that they don't allow people to enter those lands. And if they kick them out for like at night, they can't do that. So if these people are Muslim or non-Muslim, on Day of Judgment, they're going to be accountable. And what are they going to say? Now, if someone digs a well in an unowned piece of land and the water comes out of it, this water was in a way that if you take from it, another water replaces it. In this case, the one who digs the well, he is not entitled to prevent others from drinking water from that well. He cannot say no one drinks from this well. So he takes his need and he does not prevent others from drinking from it. If one digs a well in an unowned land, this would not be enough for him to own the land. He can own the well itself, but not the land, and that's a difference. There's a hadith that if you translate literally, it would say the Muslims are partners in three: water, grass, and fire. Truly, this is referring to what we are talking about: the grass that exists in an unknown land, the fire, and the water that all exist in an unknown land. This is what it means. Now, if I have a piece of land which is mine and I dig in this land and water comes out of this land, everything in it would be mine. Likewise, If I take water from a river and put it in a container, once I take that amount of water, which isn't, and put it in a container, whatever's in that container is now mine. If a fire starts in an unknown land, I can use it and you can use it. I can light wood. I can light fire, a piece of wood from it, and you can light from it a piece of wood if you want. This is what the hadith means. So the grass that grows in my land is mine. But the grass that is in unowned land, it's for everybody. Okay, so there was questions and answers that at the end of the class that I'll be sharing. If there is a room made of glass, can a man and a woman sit there with the door shut? If this place, if this is a place where people frequently pass, the answer is if they see them in a way that they are not alone and in a way that they do not do anything indecent, usually, then yes. When a woman makes sujood, should her hands be down, um, sorry. When a woman makes sujood, where should her hands be? Does she put her elbows on the floor? No, she brings her elbows to her sides. For the man, it's better to take when he makes sujood for his elbows away from his sides. So for the woman, it's better for her to bring her near her sides. For the man, when he makes sujood, it's better for him to put his elbows away from his sides. For the woman, it's better for her to bring her elbows to her sides and put her hands next to her head, not at the back or near her chest, for example, or forward in front of her head. Question: what is the judgment of putting a book over another open book, which are religious books? The answer is not permissible. You can't open a religious book and then open another one on top of it because, like this, you're using the lower one like a table or something. And this is not the proper exalting of the religious books properly. Question: what if you know that the owner of this item accepts you to lend it to someone else? The answer: if you really know that's what the owner does not mind to lend it to someone else, go ahead and do it. Question: in the case of paying a salary, what about to pay a salary to those who play sports? The answer: in this transaction, they do not observe the religious rules. The contracts that take place are not valid. Question: is there something such as a private beach? The answer: if it's by a beach, there's nothing really a private beach if we're talking about a beach. You can build a cabin, a house, or whatever close to the beach, but you cannot have a fence or anything, or marks telling the people that you cannot step here and reach the ocean from this part. This part of the ocean is mine. This part of the beach is mine, so you do not step into it. Religiously, it's not permissible. You cannot do that. Same thing with the rivers. Sometimes next to a river, they build like a cafe, and then they prevent anyone to reach the river, like they put a fence around the cafe. So this is haram. Also, if someone does, this is what teacher says, if someone does that, I don't go to such places, and I don't encourage someone to do what he's doing. The question: if you eat meat from an animal that was stabbed before it was slaughtered, what if you eat meat from an animal that was stabbed before slaughtering? The answer is it depends. If it was stabbed in a way that it did not have a sustained life before slaughtering, then it's not permissible to eat it. If it has a sustained life before slaughtering it, and then it was slaughtered, it's permissible to eat. If one doubts about that, then one does not eat it. Okay, let us stop for today. Let us say تهليل الصلاة على النبي. لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم.